Welcome everyone to the Stateless Atheist. On today's show, the three heathens take a look at a video on capturing Christianity where Frank Turek makes a lot of science claims that just don't really add up. So we give our own points of view. If you have any other videos that you want us to review, please leave a comment, and if you like the video, please like and subscribe. This is a new channel and we need all the support we can get. Thank you, and let's begin.
So let's get to the first question. The first question is about evolution.
Is an awesome question?
It's an okay question.
All right. Let's see what we can do.
It's a really good question.
Is this question involved?
I don't know.
You don't know. All right. Let's see. Is it an intelligently designed question, or is it just a random question?
It is intelligently designed.
All right.
It's intelligently designed because it has a message.
You're refuting evolution right now. I don't
There we
need to
go.
answer a thing. Go ahead.
So this is the first question.
All right.
Okay, and this is from our patrons. So the first one is the Bible compatible with evolution, meaning common ancestry is true, but the process was guided?
Well, it depends on what you mean by that. If you mean biblical inerrancy, it doesn't appear to be compatible because you've got God creating Adam out of the dust, not out of pre-existing animal forms. So I would say no. But even if macroevolution were true, and I don't think it is, but even if it were true, that wouldn't mean Christianity was false. It would give us problems for biblical inerrancy in the Old Testament, but it wouldn't mean Christianity was false. God could still exist, and Christianity could still be true because Jesus came, died, and rose from the dead. So it's a secondary issue in my view, evolution. It's
The general idea that most Christians have, that original sin was created by Adam and Eve, and Jesus came back to solve that. If Adam and Eve didn't exist, that whole part is thrown out. So it does have certain problems for Christianity. What was the version you were hearing about, Ryan?
Well, it's not so much the version, and I'm not necessarily sure how they make up for it, but I mean, within the Catholic Church accepts evolution, right? They've been very open about that. But if you're going to accept evolution, then it does bring up a question of how is this Adam and Eve story not allegorical then? Because, how are you going to start out with the first two humans, in perfect form, fully developed and everything? There was no trajectory before that. And then, they mess up, and then suddenly we're going to start off this, developmental trajectory or something. It just doesn't make sense, And I don't know necessarily how, say, the Catholic Church officially grapples with that, right? I haven't necessarily looked into it. I just, I was raised Catholic, and it was always like, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with it because we accept evolution, and like there's no contradiction there. But it doesn't take but a few moments, as you've just done, to think it through and go, wait a second. If we do accept evolution, then it doesn't make sense to accept that Adam and Eve story as literally true, at least if the way I'm thinking it through. I'd be curious to see someone come up with some kind of a response to that. I'm not sure if Alex has heard anything.
Well, I mean, I haven't really heard a response to it, but I know what primarily makes it very problematic is trying to gauge, first and foremost, where, as sort of you noted, where that clean indication is of there being two humans, where we can distinctively say, yes, this is where humans are. And I think many individuals have used this analogy in the past. It's trying to denote in like a black and white gradient where black starts and where white starts. There's a lot of gray there. And I think that's how it is a lot with evolution, is that it's very difficult to try and tell where that is. And I don't think we've effectively done it, evidently.
You see on my page 2 weeks ago or so, some guy, I forget his name, blocked me because I said mitochondrial Eve.
Yeah.
Not a literal person.
I did see that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I mean, if you look at scientific papers, it's not. Like, it's not like something I was attacking him or anything like that. Like,
They found the apple! They finally found the original apple! It was just, shit out near a tree someplace, right?
So I guess I'm wondering now, and we may see it or we won't. He already said the macro term, but is Frank going to be the one to say, well, I believe in microevolution, but I don't believe in macroevolution. Like, I'm still wondering to see where he actually stands on this.
I'm pretty
When
sure
someone says they don't believe in macroevolution, I'm gonna say probably, because if someone doesn't approve of either one, they're just probably gonna say evolution's bullshit. But that's just my guess.
I'm pretty sure I've seen him say in other videos that microevolution, or as we call it, adaptation.
There you go.
I can't talk today. Adaptation doesn't have a problem. We see that all the time, but macro
Change within species versus change between species.
yes.
Interesting issue, but it's a secondary issue. It's not essentially a statement.
Okay. So why do you say that we'd have to reject? Is that what you're saying? We'd have to reject biblical inerrancy?
Well, yeah, if we're going to say, or unless we're just going to allegorize the whole thing and say
Okay.
when Genesis says that God created Adam out of the dust, that was just a metaphor of some kind for God created.
Well, so what if someone said that that's the correct interpretation? So, right, there's different interpretations of Scripture. So maybe they just say that the correct interpretation sort of leaves it an open question of how God brought about life. So it wouldn't reject inerrancy or even inspiration. It would just be, this is a different interpretation of this biblical passage.
Right. I think you can do that with some passages. That one seems pretty clear to me.
Which one?
That God creates Adam out of the dust. He doesn't create him out of pre-existing life forms. He seems to directly, divinely create Adam out of dust. So all the other animals are created, and then you get man. So
yeah, well,
it would seem to be an odd interpretation to say that we could fit evolution in there.
Yeah, some theologians think that you could have like a separate event of God creating man specifically, but then everyone else, or all the other life forms, sort of going through the evolutionary process. And so God sort of specially creates man somewhere down the line.
Yeah, I hadn't heard that before. I'd have to see what kind of argumentation they give for that.
Yeah.
But it seems to be he's creating the life forms individually through the days, and then you get to man in day 6 and he creates them. But let me just say this, that even if macroevolution were 100% true, the laws that drive it still need a mind behind them.
No, that I agree with.
Yeah, because the world is not random. The world has order to it and structure. That's how we can
Yeah.
do science, by the way, as cause and effect, reliable cause and effect, very fine-tuned natural laws. So even if you were to say that somehow,
I was ready to pause myself anyway.
Oh my God, how the fuck can you say anything in Mendelian biology? Just all of it's practically random. Am I wrong?
No, it's either random or controlled by God. That's it.
Oh my fucking Lord.
That's a false dichotomy, and like, it's painful.
I feel like, okay, so here's the thing that I don't really understand. A lot of individuals I've spoken to, and this is not just in biology, this goes way farther than that in cosmology and what have you. But for some reason, individuals think that probability for some odd reason is suspended from some sort of intentional effort that God can put forth. And so when I talk to individuals about creating man, I still think that there's a chance that God may have not done that. And I ask individuals, did God have the ability to not create us? And of course, I get a resounding yes out of that. And we could say that there's a probability that we would not have existed, because that chance evidently is there if individuals concede to it. So just there being probability doesn't necessarily mean that there doesn't mean that God can't be or what have you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Well, this is just a bald assertion saying that, in order to have something so ordered, they have to have some intelligent director who's making sure it has that order. And I mean, that's a strange thing to me to hear, especially having, spent many years within like the libertarian sphere and, like studying markets and stuff, because the whole idea of like spontaneous order, right? It's a really good ordered arrangement that's coming about through non-ordered interactions, more or less. People are just going about doing their own thing, and yet still order comes about anyway. I wish there was a Christian there who would have done pushback on that, because I know Christians who would have done pushback there on that statement. Because you could say that, oh well, you need God to create the very beginning of everything, without saying a statement like, oh, well, the only way you could get any kind of order, like that kind of order, would be from some intelligent God-directed being. Those are two different things.
It's funny.
Yeah, but I guess my problem is that, like, as Daniel noted, it's just like I hate when people dichotomize probability and God. I guess that was sort of my point I was getting at.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I often, to build on what you were saying, Ryan, 2 points. First off, I'm always saying where statists and theists have a similar argument where statists often don't feel like you need some type of order created by directive, as opposed to theists feel the same way for life or the universe existing. They have to be directed that way. They in both cases, I believe it's possible for some type of emergent order, and both groups don't. That they pick and choose where emergent order is possible.
Right.
Second thing, when he says that order requires an intelligent being, that argument refutes itself, because God, according to him, I guess, would probably be orderly, right?
I'd hope so.
So if God is orderly, wouldn't you need something even more intelligent than God to create it?
Well, and see, that's where they would go back to, like, this idea of, well, you can't have an infinite regress, and so you need this one maximally, powerful, maximally intelligent, good, blah 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 blah, being to be the ultimate, like the finish line, essentially, of development. Like, this is the apex.
Well, we're over the starting line, but yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't like that, because I don't know if that comes from a place of reason rather than a place of incredulity. Because I think if there was, hypothetically, and I'm not saying that there is infinite regress with anything, but I think if there potentially was, that would be very, very hectic to us humans, and we wouldn't want to try and delve down that sort of grapevine. So I don't know if individuals actually do it from a place of rationality. I just think it's something that they look at and they say it's incredibly problematic, and it is, but still, I digress.
The thing about regress is we don't know that that an infinite regress can't exist. People hypothesize that it can't because they think it doesn't make sense. It may be how they think that humans can't comprehend God. Maybe we can't comprehend an infinite regress. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist.
Yeah, could be. Again, I don't know enough about astrophysics
and also
and other stuff. But
what about? Well, I don't know of any astrophysicist that says an infinite regress is impossible. It's usually a theologian. Brian, have you ever heard a physicist say that?
No, but I'm sure you could probably find a physicist who considers themselves religious who will say that.
Yeah.
They probably wouldn't make it from an argument based on physics, but yeah.
But even that. So even if you have God, you still have basically an infinite regress if he existed all forever. You would have to go back prior to time that he always existed. How is that not an infinite regress anyway?
But you could just say God was ethereal, and boom, every possible rational sin is wiped away, nice and easy.
It's every problem that they find. They have to give God another characteristic to solve that problem.
Sure. Yeah.
Let's hear what.
Well, at some point, it always comes back to, like you were saying, what we don't know, or what we can't understand, or what we can't comprehend, and then this is the rock for which you hang on to is God. He makes sure that you can have rationality, so you can have this conversation in the first place. He makes sure that there's a beginning for the universe. He makes sure that there isn't some infinite regress because we're bothered by the idea of that, or we don't think that could even be possible. So he's got to be like the solution for it, or something, or something can't come from nothing, which is another thing we may even see in this video. I don't know. And there's a really good video by Ozymandias Ramses II on YouTube where he says, we actually can't make that statement, that something can't come from nothing. And, well, anyway.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly.
And, like, you're saying, like, how they say, well, God put something on our hearts or in our minds or whatever. How come if he put something in our hearts or in our minds, how come he couldn't put the ideas that are supposed to be in the Bible within us? Why does he need the Bible?
Some would say it's supplemental to understand ourselves or some bullshit, maybe.
Well, why would you need it? An all-powerful God can't just implant that in you?
No, that would defeat the journey, Daniel. Come on.
It defeats free will, I know. But then what's the point of the Bible? Like,
Well, you know what, Daniel? Here's the thing. You're just this puny little human. You know, you got your little sweater on over here. You know, and yeah. See, God wouldn't have to put a sweater on. You know, you're this puny little human who's got this limited brain. You know, but you know, God's this all powerful, all perfect, you know, being, and He has a plan, and this plan's well thought out. And you just can't comprehend the plan. And just because you can't comprehend the plan doesn't mean that that plan doesn't exist, and it doesn't mean that that God that made that plan doesn't exist. And so what it comes down to is that you've just got to trust, you know, that this plan is the real one, and that God has got it all figured out. And even if you can't understand it now, like, just wait when you die, and He'll let it, you know, be known to you.
have you ever
Good
seen
old question begging.
Have you ever seen the video from Dark Matter 2525 where God was applying to be God, and he's like, so wait, you want this master plan, but you want everyone to have free will at the same time? You got to fill out a paradox form 2020 or something like that.
I
How
haven't
can you
seen
have a
that.
master plan and everybody have free will at the same time?
Things have to end a certain way, but don't worry, you still can make any action you want at any point. Yeah.
These life forms can come into existence through some sort of natural process. The natural process itself is guided by a mind, because the natural forces that, when we combine, we call them natural laws, require a mind. They're consistent, they're precise, they're very fine-tuned. They require a mind to even exist. So you don't get away from some kind of intelligence by saying macroevolution is true.
Definitely agree there. All right, let's move on to our next question, which is your opposition to theistic evolution primarily philosophical, biblical, or scientific in nature?
Yes. No, it's more scientific, because
Scientific, okay.
not only do I see
But yeah, explain to me what you mean by scientific. Like how
well, when
scientific
people are trying to say that we could have evolved through natural selection, first of all, I can't say most, but there's a movement among even atheistic Darwinists, as you know, to find a new theory of macroevolution, because neo-Darwinism doesn't work. There was the famous meeting back in 2016, November 2016, in the Royal Society over there in the UK, where they called a meeting. They basically said the current theory of macroevolution doesn't work. We need to find a new one. Now,
you're gonna have to inform me on this, because I don't know about this.
Oh,
this meeting that took place.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, a couple of folks from the Discovery Institute went. Stephen Meyer, Doug Axe, maybe a couple others. And this meeting was advertising the fact that the theory of neo-Darwinian evolution does not work. You can't modify.
So for anyone who may not know what neo-Darwinian evolution is, that's like with the two mechanisms, right? Natural selection and random mutation.
Yeah.
And then natural selection acting on random mutation.
Sure. You
and
can't
that's how you
take
explain
a
biology.
genetic code and modify it and get new body plans. You can modify it randomly, or maybe even intelligently from now till doomsday. You'll never get a new body plan. Why? Why? Because DNA itself does not give you a new body plan. DNA codes for proteins. But to get a new body plan, you need another kind of information known as epigenetic information. Epigenetic information is the structure. To use an analogy, here we are sitting in a beautiful chapel. The software that designed this chapel will never give you the chapel. The software will give you the instructions on how to build the chapel. But in order to have the chapel, you need physical materials. You need concrete, you need nails, you need wood, you need, all those things. You need a foundation. That, when it comes to biology, the analogy there with biology is in epigenetic information, the structure of the cell is sort of like the structure of this chapel. Whereas the software, the DNA, would be the analogous part. There would be the software program that came up with the blueprint for this particular chapel. So modifying the software will not get you a chapel. Modifying DNA will not get you a new body plan.
Okay, and maybe I have a disconnect here. Break that down for me. Like how are we not getting a new body plan if you have information there.
Because information alone doesn't give you a new body plan. You need the structure itself. So you don't need.
So what structure do you need?
Well, like the cell wall, right?
So that has to be so. Okay, so you have it, but through like when a new life form comes from the previous whatever generation. So you're saying that like if we even had new DNA, like a new DNA code, you won't get the new structure.
No, you need the structure as well.
Okay.
And then
So why wouldn't the structure be there?
I'm standing on the shoulders of people like Stephen Meyer. He's the real expert.
Okay.
Okay. There are several other problems with macroevolution other than epigenetic information.
Okay.
One is genetic limits to change. Like we can use our minds to breed all kinds of dogs, right? But we run into genetic limits. We can't go smaller than, say, a Chihuahua or larger than a Great Dane. Here we are using our minds to try and expand the genus of dogs, but we can't break certain genetic barriers. If using our minds we can't break certain genetic barriers, why do we think an unintelligent process could do it?
Well, maybe. Well, I think the answer that they would give is that it's just a long process, right? Over about a year, over 1 million years, maybe we could make dogs smaller or larger.
Well, the problem with that is Richard Lenski has done work on that with E. coli bacteria, where he's taken the same E. coli bacteria and tried to modify it over, I think, 30 or 40 years, probably 30 something years by now. And after all that time, which would be equivalent to about 1 million years of human evolution, he still has just E. coli bacteria.
So maybe that just applies to E. coli, not to.
Well, I mean, you could come up with any possibility you want, right? But when you come up with possibilities are not evidence. You can say, well, maybe it is that, but that's not evidence. That's just a possibility.
Well, maybe the possibility is equally as likely as the explanation that it can't happen.
Say that again.
So maybe because it's a possible explanation of what's going on. Evolution is an explanation. So you could have a possible explanation of, yeah, the E. coli can't evolve, or we can't get it past this, whatever.
Using our intelligence.
We can't use our intelligence to get past it. But other things can happen given enough time. So that's a possible explanation, but it equally explains the data.
No, it doesn't explain the data because there's no evidence for it. It's just a possibility. There's a difference between coming up with a possibility and coming up with evidence for a possibility. And if all the evidence at this point says we can't break this genetic barrier, why would we suggest that we can break a genetic barrier?
There's no evidence that says we can't break a genetic barrier. I'm looking up this conference and that he's talking about. I've heard of it before, and I've heard on a few different places that they actually misrepresent the conference. Surprising, right?
Surprise.
Yeah.
Basically, what it was is it's not that they're questioning the neo-Darwinism or anything like that. You do find that on the creationist sites. I'm on a site right now called Quanta Magazine. Seems more scientific. I don't think it's a creationist site. And it only talks about science. That's one reason why. And it talks about how evolutionary theory has gone through multiple revisions since we've even thought about it. It's had revolutions of its own. The first, of course, was launched by Charles Darwin in 1859. Then it talks about in 1492, British biologist Julian Huxley described the emergent framework in a book called Evolution, the Modern Synthesis. And it's talking about not throwing Darwinism out. There's a section called Adding to Darwin. It's talking about how we think that certain pieces need to change. Like when I argue with theists often about evolution, I point out two things. There's both a fact of evolution and a theory of evolution. The fact of evolution is that evolution happens. We know that for 100% true. 99.999, because we can't be certain of anything. But all the evidence unequivocally points to that evolution happens. The theory of evolution, on the other hand, is how evolution happens. And it's important to be able to understand the distinction between them, and he doesn't seem to be getting that distinction. He seems to think that they're the same exact thing. And he thinks, so if they question the theory, like exactly how exactly it's done. Therefore, evolution itself doesn't happen. So
Yeah, well, the fact that he's citing this conference in such an authoritative way and clearly is misrepresented it is already a problem for me. Like, putting aside, I agree with what you're saying, but I mean, like, that this is someone who doesn't seem really interested in actually understanding it. It sounds like he had his take on it already set out, and now he's looking for anything that might confirm it.
It's kind of the natural law of the gaps argument here. We haven't found a natural law yet to do this, but if we wait long enough, we're going to find a natural law that does this. Well, that's called faith. Okay, give me enough time. In fact, I had this.
So far, the God of the gaps, every single thing. No, I shouldn't say every single thing, but a lot of things that we used to think attributed to God, we've over time pointed out. No, has a natural explanation. No, has a natural explanation. No, has a natural explanation. It's never gone in the opposite direction. We've never thought, no, this is a natural explanation. Nope, look, we proved it was God or it was supernatural somehow. We've never done that. So the whole natural, what did he call it? Natural something of the gaps. It doesn't.
Yeah. Well, but the thing is there can be the answer of I don't know.
Yes.
And see, in the way he works is, well, if the naturalists haven't come up with a good explanation right now, that means that we get to fall back on my guy, until you can come up with something, and that's a problem, because here's the thing: I'm not an expert on biology, I'm not an expert on evolution, all that kind of stuff, and so if we're all sitting here and going, what's the answer to XYZ question in biology, and I go, I don't know. That doesn't mean either of you are correct by default just because you have something to say. It could just be, none of us knows, right? And that's okay. And the goal is we just keep searching and looking in hopes that we might find out. It could be the case that we never find out. And that's just how it is. You don't get to go, well, that's inconvenient, and so I'm gonna just fall back on my, my God character or whatever thing you particularly believe in. So that's an issue that you'll see come up a lot with Turek, because it comes down to this idea of, well, if they don't have an explanation and they're telling me they may have to wait a long time to figure it out, well, in that meantime, they don't know, and I do know, because hashtag what the Bible says or what have you. So yeah, that's an issue right there, is that kind of mentality of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with you, and I don't know, I feel like, and evidently this is how humans communicate a lot. I think humans have the tendency to communicate in false consensuses, and I think for him, sort of thinking that there's individuals that, it seems like he's speaking about them in a preponderant sense. I don't want to say that, but that's sort of the impression I get, in that there's people actually hoping for it to be the case. And I feel almost as if he's speaking about it in such a way where he has that same sort of perception on God. And from my experience, whilst it may be very limited with biology, I haven't found too many individuals waiting, hoping for this to be the case in the future, because we already have established evidence, in my personal opinion, whether from convergent evolution, whether from comparative anatomy, and of course, molecular evidence, obviously, that there is relation between different species, of course. So that, to me, I don't know why individuals have to worry about that when it's already here. It's already right in front of us. And I don't know if Frank is turning his head to that. I don't know if he provides a refutation for that later in this video. Don't even know if he has. But it sort of confuses me a bit.
And how he said before, there's a lot of evolutionists that are, or I don't even think he said evolutionists. He used a different term, like neo-Darwinists or whatever.
The atheist, neo-Darwinists, etc. Yeah.
They're questioning evolution now. But if you look up online, no, right now it's still nearly 97%.
There may be nuances there.
Yes, see, that's
There's
what I'm saying.
nuances there that they may disagree with, but the general consensus about evolution is that it is true.
That's what I was saying before. He's confusing evolution happening with the theory of evolution of how it happens. He thinks they're the same exact thing. he thinks if you question how it happens, automatically you're throwing out that it happens, and that's not logical. That's not how logic works.
Well, and just as he wants to say, macroevolution can be true, and that doesn't do anything to undermine the Jesus story and all that kind of stuff. We can also say that if evolution was disproven tomorrow, that ceased to be an explanation for how life has developed on our planet. That doesn't suddenly mean that atheism's wrong, right? I don't know.
Atheism is a metaphysical viewpoint, or unless you've described in your psychological state. But either way, for a lot of individuals, it's a metaphysical proposition. We're talking about the exact opposite with biology.
Right.
I mean, until you start shoehorning a god into it, but
right.
A lot of scientists are not going to be talking about the metaphysical. That's evident.
But that's the way that Frank tries to frame it.
Of course.
University of Michigan years ago, there was an atheist who got up to the microphone, and I just gave an evidence for the cosmological argument, the evidence of a spaceless, timeless, immaterial, personal, intelligent being created the universe. And he said, oh no, one day we're going to find a natural cause for the universe. I said, John, I said, John, I'm never going to find a natural cause for all of nature. If nature had a beginning, it can't be a natural cause. And he said, no, give it enough time, we'll find it. I said, no, in principle, you can find it. And I said, first of all, John,
can't find it.
You can't find a natural cause for all of nature. And I said, first of all, it sounds like a lot like faith. Right? Give me enough time, I'm going to figure this out. That's a faith position. But secondly,
maybe it's a faith position that's based on good reasons.
Like what?
Isn't it funny how when they use faith for their belief in God, it's a positive thing, but when they use faith for what they're trying to explain as faith now, it's negative? Also, another thing that he doesn't understand when it comes to cosmology is the laws of nature. He's saying, well, the laws of nature, well, of course, that couldn't create the universe, because if nature didn't exist yet, how were the laws of nature there to create it? But what he doesn't understand is, I forget which fallacy it is, where he's saying the whole is exactly the same as the individual parts. Maybe prior to nature,
The fallacy of division.
It's very possible that there were different laws in place that was able to cause it that we don't know about. Just because you can't say prior to the universe and everything existing, we don't know what existed prior to that. So you can't say, well, no, it must be God. How do you know? There could have been other laws. It's possible there could have been, like we were saying, maybe a multiverse, or what if, as Matt Dillahunty often says, I think he's the one who says it, universe shitting machines or whatever. Like, it doesn't have intelligence, it just shits out universes.
Yeah, I'm not sure. He really hasn't deliberated on that.
No, but nested. Oh, go ahead.
No, yeah, I'm just saying, he hasn't really deliberated on how it absolutely requires some sort of intelligent mind.
He won't. He'll just say it does.
Yeah.
Nested.
We need to remember this guy's more of a preacher. We need to remember that. That's kind of how he's communicating right now, and it's very unsurprising.
Nested under everything he's saying is that, and I said this before we started, is this idea of something can't come from nothing, right? It's kind of smuggled under the whole discussion. It's like, whoa, it assumes like we have to come to, like when he's talking with the student's like, well, we may find out, down the road. It's like, but there may be nothing to find out, actually. It may be just the case that, like, well, something can come from nothing. And that's not something we're ever able to test. Right. And so there's nothing to find out down the road. Right. We won't ever be able to test something like that. And just because we don't understand or we don't know or whatever doesn't mean he gets to then jump in and go, well, hey, my God explains this and everything. So we'll go with that because at least my explanation explains everything. That's the way it's always framed. And I just disagree completely.
Yeah, I mean, I think when a lot of individuals they mention where and they frame it a lot of times with atheists, and in fact, that's probably most of the time I see is when they say that we think that something can come from nothing. And I really do think that there's a lot of linguistic issues with that, and I think a lot of times for some individuals it goes past other people. And obviously there was Lawrence Krauss and how he talks about nothing, and it's not the nothing that actually theists understand it to be. But still, at the same time, when I think about someone saying that nothing can come from or something can come from nothing, I don't necessarily agree with that, because let's say, for instance, if the universe always was, it always existed, I still wouldn't say that it came from something, since came implies causality. So I still wouldn't say that. Rather, I'd say it's something that's always been. So I sometimes understand their points in that sense, but still, even then, it's like, what if it operates in such a way that we can't necessarily understand, that we can't necessarily explicate? We haven't found, maybe we don't even have the intelligence to understand, which I think we always need to wonder that. And that absolutely may be the case.
Yeah,
But
like or it's possible that we can't understand God. Maybe it's possible we can't understand how something can come from nothing, or how the universe could have always existed.
sure, yeah, and the difference between us, at least so it seems, I mean, maybe different atheists, they themselves are going to frame it a different way, but we're talking about it conditionally. And from my experience, when I hear that from many theists, is that they'll say it to be a matter of fact.
Yes.
And so I wouldn't even say that they're self-same in that sense, unless if an atheist does frame it that way, in the same way that a theist possibly would. But yeah.
Yeah, we're giving possibilities. They're saying certainties. We're certain this is the way it happened. If we could give other possible solutions, automatically that proves your certainty can't be true.
I'm just going to quick plug again, for anyone watching this later, on Ozymandias Ramses II's channel. Just search "Can Something Come from Nothing?" It's only about 12 minutes long, a little under 12 minutes long, and is it logically impossible? Is it physically impossible? And then just kind of talking through all these kinds of discussions. And he does a really good job in a short amount of time of really like kind of sketching that out. So I just recommend anyone check that out.
I mean, I guess it would have to be the evidence from common ancestry. It could be something.
No,
like
I'm talking
that.
about the beginning of the universe.
Oh,
the beginning of the universe.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
If the universe had a beginning,
right,
then it can't be something inside the universe that brought it into existence, because
right.
it didn't exist yet. It's got to be something outside the universe. So I said to him, John, when you say, just give me enough time and I'll figure out a natural cause for all of nature, that would be like me saying, if you give me enough time, I'll discover that I gave birth to my own mother. No, you can't. I can't give birth to my own mother, no matter how much time I spend, because my mother must exist prior to me. The same thing is true if the universe, all of nature, had a beginning and didn't exist at one point. Then there has to be something that transcends all of nature, something supernatural. And if space, matter, and time had a beginning, it seems.
I guess the most evident thing, and I'm probably going to be speaking for everyone here, is it just me? That sounds like a false analogy. I think about it, and it's just like, I don't understand how an individual can juxtapose humans and how we're created and the universe. Like, and we have astounding evidence for how humans are created. And it's like, I just don't understand how you can juxtapose something that we have way more than enough evidence for, and then utilize that as some sort of evidential proxy for the universe. Well, to me, that's a non sequitur, and that's a false analogy if he is utilizing it that way.
Yeah,
which
like,
it seems he is.
What's the argument that they use all the time, that if you find it on a beach?
Oh, the Watchmaker?
The Watchmaker.
The Watchmaker argument. And
yeah, Paley's Watchmaker argument.
I try to explain to theists quite often. The argument doesn't make sense because we have experience of watches being created by humans. We don't have any experience or evidence of something, an intelligent designer creating life.
Hold on, I just got something with that. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah.
If we think about children, and I'm pretty sure Turek is a strict monotheist. If we think about making children, I mean, how many people does it typically take to make a child?
2.
Yeah, so does that really corroborate a single creator?
No. Well, that's the thing. Like, he thinks that it points to God. So let's say it points that there must be an intelligent designer. How is that intelligent designer one? Why can't it be two? Why can't it be five?
Yeah, and that's the same thing with the watchmaker argument as well that you could apply to it, because I mean, no, I don't know how watches are actually made, so don't get me wrong, but I mean, I'd be hard pressed to believe if it's just one individual. You know what I mean? At least maybe it was at one point.
You know, as libertarians and all, we should probably change that to pencils.
Huh.
That's funny. No, but in all honesty, it's like, why can't that be the case? And I'll see a lot of these teleological arguments, and a lot of them sort of ignore the fact that many of these things that they're referencing to juxtapose to a god or lend credence to the notion don't understand that many individuals are involved with the processes to create such. So I mean, it's just, to me, it doesn't compute.
Yeah.
To me, the only cause that could have brought it into existence is a spaceless, timeless, immaterial cause.
See, that I like because it's deductive, and you can show that, like, if you bring something physical into existence, then you can't have something physical that brings all physical reality into existence. But I don't see how that applies to the evolutionary case.
Well, let's go back to the evolutionary case for just a minute. Okay. First of all, evolutionists could stop intelligent design people in their tracks if they could answer one question. And the question is, what natural laws or natural forces can produce information? They can't answer that question. Why? Because there is no answer. No natural force can produce information. If you're walking along the beach and you see in the sand, John loves Mary, you don't assume the waves did that, or crabs came out of the water and made that message. You assume there had to be a mom.
This is painful. First off, he's confusing DNA with information. Information about DNA are things that we have come up. It's how we understand DNA. It's not information itself. Yes, I understand. That's what theists.
There's actually like there's actually cytosine actually in our bodies, and it actually says cytosine or has a big C. You know what I mean? It's actually in our bodies.
And also, he's also doing another argument for incredulity. Say we don't know any process that could create, say, information. Maybe we just don't know it yet. Again, it doesn't mean God.
Well, you know, Daniel,
I
you have a
definition
tremendous
of
amount of faith
information,
right now.
too.
I know.
Well, I need a definition on information, because I mean that is relatively vague. So
I like his reaction as he's paused right now, though. Like that's a perfect. That's how he should look after we just had our little brief conversation here. You know.
he's probably gonna be smug as shit. No, let's be honest. No one's gonna see this. No one's gonna watch this probably, but one can hope, though.
We're starting to grow a little bit.
Well,
why?
What?
I was gonna say, 80 views on our last video is still, better than nothing, huh?
Yeah, and that was.
Sorry, guys. About 70 of those are mine, but
Yeah, it was you reviewing.
flapping that F5 button, eh?
Flapping that and fapping a little bit too there.
Yeah, probably. I had my dick in one hand and I had chicken nuggets in the other, and the chicken nuggets kept hitting the keyboard.
Oh, you were hitting the F5 key with your tongue.
Yeah, with my chicken nuggets, yeah.
Oh, with the tongue?
Yeah.
Because in all your prior experience, you know that messages always come from minds. Now, this is not a God of the gaps argument. Why? Because we're not arguing from what we don't know. We're arguing from what we do know. We don't have a gap in our knowledge when we say we see John loves Mary and Sam. Mm-hmm. We go, that's positive, empirically verifiable evidence for an intelligent cause. So we're arguing.
Yeah, so I think what they have to do is just say that it was random.
Unless you have evidence that it was an intelligent designer, it's a God of the gaps argument. Sorry.
I just don't understand this. He keeps getting stuck on what we know, and I don't know why people think that we can have two completely, whether if it's an item with the watchmaker or whatever the case may be, even though obviously, notwithstanding, watches are pretty abiotic, I would say. But I still don't understand how people think that you can make independent claims from something else that's independent on its own. And if you require talking about something that is completely isolated and disparate from what you're trying to corroborate, then perhaps there is nothing independent you can say about what you're trying to corroborate. So I've always noticed that individuals, when they're trying to make a claim about something, they'll speak a lot more about what is already known and less about how it actually applies to their own situation. I feel like if Frank honestly had that evidence stand alone, he wouldn't need this analogy, really. I really don't think he would. I think it would just be very easy to recite the information and then let it stand on its own. But no, he needs to keep piggybacking off of things that, yes, we do know.
Well, and we're always, he's acting as if we're always forced to choose, you know, at any time, like there's uncertainty, right? So if I'm on a path and I don't know, let's say I see like some odd arrangement of leaves I've never seen before, and like it spells out like, you know, go here or something, and like I've never seen these leaves.
Pareidolia.
Yeah. So I see this, and like he's like, well, what does messages like that? Well, intelligent minds, and so it's got to be either, you know, us, or it's going to be, you know, God or something like that. And it's like, if I see something like that, you know, my first thought isn't, gee, I wonder if this was like non-intelligent versus intelligent. I'm like, I want to get to the bottom of what this is, you know, and like he almost acts as if we always have to put our feet in the sand on what the source is, rather than just go, I don't know what caused this, but let me go look into it, you know. Well, the reason why he's doing this is not because he's really confused. It's because he's got an agenda. He's actually trying to make a case for the existence of his particular God. And so he's trying to kind of put you in a corner so you have to choose. That's really what it's about. But most people working in their daily life are not going to go, oh God, I have to choose and know for sure right now what's the cause of whatever this is. You speculate and you question it and you look into it. I mean, it's not that difficult.
Yep.
Right, that there was no sort of explanation. It just happened.
That's not an explanation.
Yeah.
That's just
Just
fate.
to remove an explanation.
Yeah, that's fate. And when people say, well, you don't have an explanation for it, as Ed Phaser would say,
yeah,
you've had him on your program, I just gave an explanation. Now, you may not like it, but it's an explanation.
Mm-hmm.
So evolutionists have the problem of, at the very basis of life is information. Even a one-celled amoeba, as Richard Dawkins has 1,000 volumes worth of an encyclopedia in it. Now, most of your viewers don't know what an encyclopedia is. People used to come to your house with big books and say, "Can you buy these?"
Well, they're familiar with Wikipedia.
Okay.
Incredibly reliable Wikipedia.
Yes. They used to come in books, like 26 of them, about this thick and about this big.
Wikipedia is about as reliable as those encyclopedias were. They average.
Encyclopedias, check it out.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next question. We've talked about evolution. Now,
By the way, let me just say one thing about evolution. We didn't get through all this, and I just want to complete the circle.
Okay,
Not only
good.
I just want to say just that brief point he made. I mean, we already kind of covered it, but just to kind of reinforce it, you know, he's like, but that's not an explanation. I've got an explanation. You may not like it, but at least I have an explanation. That all comes back to this idea that it's better to have an explanation regardless of how shitty it is, than to just say you don't know and you're wanting to wait until, you know, you have enough maybe evidence to figure it out, if you ever do come about that. It's always pushing you in this seat of having to like put your feet in the sand and say something, regardless of how decent it is and how backed up it is. And that is just going to be a big difference between myself and him, regardless wherever I end up coming out on, you know, the given issue. Because like that's just an issue of just how you actually come to determinations of things. And I can't. It's so foreign to me, that kind of thinking.
Yeah, he thinks if you're going down a road and you see two roads you've never went down before, and you're both uncertain that what happens down either road, he doesn't think, well, you could say, well, I don't know when I can turn back. He thinks you have to choose one of those two roads.
Right. And he may say, oh, it's definitely the left road because, you know, I'm looking at the markings on the ground. It looks like less rough people have gone down that way or something like that. And then he'll say, well, you may not like my explanation because it doesn't sound good enough, but at least I have an explanation. And then, like, do the kind of sip the tea moment or whatever. And no.
Wait, he's got to sip the tea, with his pinky out.
Yeah. Sip the tea and like your eyes kind of like get wide. Like, ooh, yeah, no.
Genetic limits to change, irreducible complexity, fossil record. These are things.
The fossil record is
epigenetic
interesting.
information.
The fossil record is interesting
Yeah.
because when I was looking into evolution a long time ago, and I'm completely agnostic about the intelligent design thing, about evolution, biological complexity, and everything. I'm still, my mind is completely open to it. So, but when I was looking into it,
Give him a year, he's going to be an intelligent designer.
but I did notice. Put that down. Put that down.
Okay.
I did notice that there are big gaps in the fossil record, and so there are naturalistic explanations for why those gaps occur. It's because fossilization is something that's very rare, doesn't happen all the time, and so we would expect to see these sorts of gaps. And a lot of Christians, I think, use the same kind of argument when we're talking about the problem of evil, is that we don't have all the information, and so we expect to have some gaps in our knowledge of God's reasons for allowing this and that.
Did he just compare the fact that not enough fossils will develop to the problem of evil?
I didn't really catch that.
We can't know God's plan, basically, he's saying, is equal to not enough fossils would have been created.
I'd have to hear it again. I'd have to hear it again to catch it.
It's very rare, doesn't happen all the time.
I'll put it back a little more.
I did notice. Put that down. Put that down.
Okay.
I did notice that there are big gaps in the fossil record, and so there are naturalistic explanations for why those gaps occur. It's because fossilization is something that's very rare, doesn't happen all the time, and so we would expect to see these sorts of gaps. And a lot of Christians, I think, use the same kind of argument when we're talking about the problem of evil, is that we don't have all the information, and so we expect to have some gaps in our knowledge of God's reasons for allowing this and that in the world. So I think that there's maybe a parallel there when the Christian is dealing with the problem of evil and what the
difference is,
okay.
we have evidence of why fossils don't create all the time, therefore why we have gaps. You're just stating God is so infinite and we can't know better. You have no evidence of why we don't have.
Yeah, there's definitely a large difference between understanding how fossils form versus giving ad hoc explanations for how you think you're God or why your God allows evil. I mean, they're wildly different. They just are. One we can observe, the other we cannot, unless they believe we can observe God. But I don't believe we can observe God the same way we can observe fossils and what have you.
I don't know.
the naturalists would do.
Well, no, because the problem with evil, we do have some reasons for knowing why evil exists.
Yeah,
For
well,
example,
they would
free
say that.
will.
Well, they would say we know some reasons why some animals would show up in our fossil records.
Yeah, because they fossilize.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
But we'd expect gaps because of
but
they
not,
don't happen all the
but
time.
not all the phyla coming into existence, or 20 of the 28 phyla coming into existence instantaneously.
Yeah,
You
that's
wouldn't
different.
expect that.
We're
That's
talking about the
Cambrian
Cambrian
explosion.
Cambrian
Yeah.
explosion.
So no, if and this is what troubled Darwin. This was called Darwin's doubt. This is why he said, if my theory's true, why isn't the fossil record just littered with transitional forms everywhere? Why do we see the Cambrian explosion just pop up in?
That's also I've seen many times
Do
taken.
you want me to pull up a list and literally try and read everything and butcher it in Latin of every transitional fossil we found in the Cambrian period? I mean, I can honestly do that right now. It's not difficult. There's literally lists that you can access. It's not difficult. I mean, it'll literally walk you through it. This is just fucking ridiculous. I mean, go ahead and look it up, seriously.
There's also, I remember, this was a long time ago, but there was like a New Yorker article called Doubting Darwin's Doubt that I think kind of broke down some of this stuff. I can't remember it because it's been many years since I read it, but
I just found Doubting Darwin's Doubt.
okay, yeah, it was like, what, 2013 or something? 2013,
2013, exactly.
something like that. And this has been consistent with him in this. I mean, God, we're only like 16 minutes in, but he'll cite something with some real like strength behind his voice and a lot of certainty. And then you look into it and dig just a little, and go, oh, he's totally taking that out of context. Like with that conference we discussed earlier, it's like he'll take pieces of it and present it in a certain way that would make you sound like, oh wow, looks those scientists are in real trouble. And then you actually go and look it up for yourself, and you go, oh wait, that's not actually what that source is saying. So I would be very doubtful anytime he makes a comment like that, and it's like very apocalyptic in the sense, oh my God, scientists are just like falling over, not knowing what to do about this.
Here, that article you were saying, this paragraph, but do not underestimate Darwin's doubt. It is a masterwork of pseudoscience.
Pseudoscience.
Meyer is a reasonably fluid writer who weaves anecdote and patient explanation. He skillfully deploys the trappings of science, the journals, the conferences, the Latinate terminology. He has a PhD from the University of Cambridge in the philosophy of science. He appears serious and above all reasonable. The Cambrian argument has been a part of creationism and its narratives for many years, but Meyer's project is to canonize it, a task he completes with great skill. Those who feel a hunger for material evidence of God, or his sense that science is a conspiracy against spiritual meaning, will find the book a thrilling read, which is to say, Meyer will find a large audience. He aims to start a conversation, or to at least keep on going, and he seems likely to succeed. It says, the last sentence is, here at least Meyer is not pretending to be a scientist. So he's not even saying, I'm a scientist, therefore, trying to get some type of authority in the book. The reviewer is saying, yeah, it's an interesting book. The way he writes it, he's a great writer. But it's definitely not a piece of scientific literature.
I'm really curious to see where this interview goes. I mean, so far, we've had nothing but trouble, and we're only like 16 minutes in out of 52 minutes.
We've had a lot more ready to complain about than the last video.
Yeah.
Individually, all these biologists know fossil precursors. So,
Well, I think it's definitely an interesting question.
yeah,
about the
sure.
fossil
And it's not a
Sure.
question essential to the faith. It's just interesting to talk about.
Yeah.
I cut the video here because it's already an hour long, and we still have an hour to go. The next section is on apologetics, and I will upload it in a few days. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed it. We are a brand new channel, so we are working on learning about video editing, and we would really appreciate it if you shared this video with your friends. Please leave any comments or questions below. This is the Stateless Atheist. Talk to you soon. Thank you everyone for joining me. Please like and subscribe. I'll see you soon.